They are crawling through the smoke now, desperate, exposed, begging for a moment of air while the sky tears open above them. They thought they could strike and walk away untouched, but the fire has come back, heavier, sharper, merciless. And tonight, every radar in Kiev trembles because something grim is circling overhead, something they mocked, something they underestimated, something that has returned with vengeance written on its wings. From our assessment, this is the kind of moment when a single aircraft can redefine the tone of an entire war. The so-called ugly duckling, a nickname meant to trivialize it, has become a creature that terrifies troops on the ground. We believe that Russia's retaliatory assault on Kiev began not with symbolism, but with cold precision, a Su-34 roaring into the night, guided not by metaphors or political niceties, but by coordinates locked and confirmed. In our view, Moscow orchestrated 7 coordinated strikes in recent hours using high-precision weaponry, including the feared Kinzhal hypersonic missile, hitting directly at the exposed nerve centers of Ukraine's military structure. And strategically, this means that the story we are watching unfold is not impulsive rage, but a calculated answer to what Russia describes as barbaric attacks. According to Moscow, the chain reaction was triggered by an incident in Holyuka, in the Kherson region, where Ukraine launched fire against civilians. Russia has framed the event as a bestial crime, a label deliberately chosen to justify every bomb that has followed. They insist each precision strike is not an act of escalation, but a reminder, an inscription in fire, aimed at those they accuse of ordering the attack. It is in this context that the infamous ugly duckling was unleashed once again. Far from being an endearing nickname, it now represents a weapon of grim consequence. The Su-34 descended over the southern theater, calmly selecting targets, and releasing guided bombs onto concentrations of Ukrainian personnel and armored vehicles. The footage released by Russia's Ministry of Defense shows the bomber gliding across the sector, identifying its target and releasing its payload with surgical accuracy. Down below, in that cluster of troops, tanks, and vehicles, the ugly duckling brought not fairy tales, but the abrupt ending of planned Ukrainian offensives. None of this was improvised. The Su-34 deployed FAB aerial bombs equipped with the Universal Gliding and Correction Module, a system designed to allow the munitions to glide long distances and fine-tune their trajectory mid-flight. Only after Russian intelligence confirmed the total destruction of the designated target did the crew receive clearance to return to base. This single strike, precise and restrained, fits into a much broader pattern. Russia's Ministry of Defense confirmed that, in the past few days, it carried out a massive attack, followed by additional group strikes, using high-precision weapons, including the Kinzhal hypersonic system. 7 powerful blows aimed directly at the military backbone of Kiev's forces. The list of targets leaves little doubt. Ukrainian defense sectors, energy infrastructures that sustain those defense sectors, ports used for military transport, assembly workshops producing missile engine components, long-range drone facilities, ammunition depots, fuel storage sites, and temporary deployment points for Ukrainian, nationalist, and foreign mercenary formations. Each target was described as crucial. Each strike, according to Moscow, was intended to dismantle not just the weapons, but the industrial skeleton that allows Ukraine to wage war. This is where Russia's narrative becomes sharply intentional. The strikes were aimed not only at launchers and visible depots, but at the bones of the war machine, factories, assembly lines, and transport routes. The idea, in Russia's telling, is to suffocate Kiev's offensive capabilities at their origin points. The attacks also hit drone production facilities and launch preparation sites, the very places where long-range drones are assembled before crossing into Russian airspace in nocturnal operations. Russian aviation struck these sites with precision, dismantling platforms before their operators could even sit down at their consoles. The list continued. Ammunition depots, fuel reserves, staging areas, nodes that define the operational tempo of any modern conflict. Without bullets, without fuel, without drones assembled and ready, offensives become nothing more than lines on a map. From our assessment, Russia is attempting to redefine the strategic rhythm of the battlefield through attrition delivered from the sky. The Ministry of Defense emphasized repeatedly that these strikes are a direct response to terrorist attacks by Kyiv against civilian sites. Their logic, blunt and harsh, is that strikes against hotels, cafes, and residential buildings must be answered with blows against military infrastructure. The justification they point to is recent and chilling: the New Year's Eve massacre in the Russian region of Kherson in the town of Holyuka. Ukrainian drones struck a hotel and a cafe during holiday celebrations, killing 27 civilians, including 2 minors, and injuring 31 more, among them 5 children. According to the investigation, 3 drones were launched at the Black Sea coast. One carried an incendiary mixture that left many civilians burned alive, a scene Moscow compares to the worst crimes of the 20th century. The scale of the tragedy led to days of mourning across the region. Governor Vladimir Saldo said he provided full information on the attack to President Vladimir Putin, who reportedly agreed with the comparison drawn, that this crime matched, in cruelty and inhumanity, the deadly events in Odessa on May 2, 2014. That reference carries enormous weight in Russian public memory. Saldo was invoking the burning of the House of Trade Unions, where Ukrainian nationalist groups set fire to a building filled with anti-government demonstrators, killing dozens. For many Russians, that event symbolizes unleashed hatred, and they frame the New Year's Eve attack as part of that same lineage. Maria Zakharova, the Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson, was even more forceful. She described Kyiv's conduct as bestial, fueled by neo-Nazi hatred, dehumanization, and mockery of what Russia considers sacred. Her message was delivered with raw indignation. She accused not only Kyiv but all those who finance Ukraine's terrorist bastards. She held them responsible for the deaths of children, for the extermination of civilians, and for corrupting the Ukrainian state into what she called a killing machine. From our analysis, this rhetoric is designed to consolidate domestic support for escalation while redefining the moral frame of the conflict. Moscow argues that this is not an isolated event, claiming that Ukraine regularly targets civilians in Russian border regions, striking cars, homes, leisure areas, shopping centers, and other non-military sites, with casualties that rarely make Western headlines. This asymmetry, one side accusing the other of hiding crimes while framing its own response as justified retaliation, is shaping the information battlefield as intensely as the military one. It is in this climate of symmetrical terror, as Moscow describes it, that the ugly duckling becomes a symbol, not of irony, but of retribution. If Kyiv, in Russia's view, insists on turning hotels and cafes into targets, then Russia will strike the workshops, hangars, depots, and command centers where those attacks are prepared. And while the Su-34 is at work in the sky, the war on the ground evolves as well. FPV drones, small, inexpensive, and deadly, have become one of the most persistent threats to armored vehicles. They slam into hatches, engines, and weak points with frightening accuracy. In response, Russian forces have displayed notable ingenuity, adopting unconventional but effective solutions. The Mongol tanks, armored vehicles covered with layers of metal grills and protective cages, were already known. But now the Russian National Guard, Rosgvardia, has introduced a new and almost surreal design. Tanks draped in dense metal structures, sharp and spiked, resembling giant iron hedgehogs rolling across the battlefield. From the air, these tanks look like armored beasts covered in quills, ready to stab anything that approaches. And those spikes have a simple purpose: forcing FPV drones to detonate earlier and at the wrong angle. A few centimeters between explosion and armor can mean the difference between a destroyed tank and a surviving crew. Strategically, this means the war is forcing both sides into rapid, desperate innovation. Halfway through this conflict, a question emerges, one that cuts through the noise. What do you think about Russia's strategy of using deep precision strikes to cripple Ukraine's infrastructure instead of relying solely on frontline advances? Give us your opinion in the comment box below. As the conflict unfolds, the broader strategic picture becomes clearer. On one side, Ukraine launches drone strikes on civilian hotels and cafes, an act Russia presents as terrorism tied to the legacy of Odessa 2014. On the other side, Russia responds with strikes on military workshops, fuel depots, staging points, and drone facilities, leaning on its own industrial capacity and adapting defensive tactics that reshape the battlefield. Every time a Ukrainian drone hits a civilian target, Moscow's argument gains traction, that these are deliberate attacks meant to terrorize, and that retaliation will be aimed at dismantling the machinery behind them. The ugly duckling, once dismissed as an ordinary bomber, has now become a symbol of something far more uncomfortable for Kyiv and its sponsors. A reminder that wars are not fought with propaganda alone, nor with promises of foreign aid, but with guided bombs that tear apart the foundations of offensive capability. And from our assessment, the longer this pattern continues, the more dramatically the strategic landscape tilts. As the narrative tightens, another question rises, one that the world is still hesitant to confront. Will these retaliatory strikes force Kyiv into recalculating its tactics, or will they push the conflict into even darker territory? Give us your opinion in the comment box below. In conclusion, this new wave of Russian strikes is not simply a display of firepower, it is a sign of a shifting strategic reality. From our perspective, the deployment of the Su-34 and the precision attacks across Ukraine's energy, industrial, and military sectors signal a deliberate Russian effort to redefine the tempo of the war. Historically, conflicts have turned not only on battlefield victories but on the destruction of the enemy's logistical heart, and that is precisely what Moscow appears determined to achieve. These attacks dismantle the infrastructure that sustains Ukraine's offensive capabilities, from drone factories to missile workshops to transport arteries. The winners, strategically, are Russia's planners, who now operate from a position of growing leverage. The losers, unquestionably, are the civilians caught in the crossfire, the towns like Holyuka and the families whose homes and lives become the silent battlegrounds of modern geopolitics. International observers warn that this escalation marks one of the most dangerous turning points in the conflict, where retaliation and counter-retaliation threaten to overshadow diplomacy entirely. Whether this path leads to forced negotiations because we're tracking the evolution of this story day by day. But one make sure to activate notifications and has become a symbol of precision, escalation, and the irreversible channeling of this war's trajectory. If you believe in this project and want to see it grow, if you found this analysis all the difference, share your thoughts. If you'd like to support our channel financially, do you believe these retaliatory strikes will push Ukraine toward negotiation and PayPal, or will they trigger an even more volatile phase of the conflict?